What's going on, guys? JB back with another dev blog. It's been a couple years, but I decided I would dust off the mic for old time's sake and do a couple of these talking videos. We'll see how many I do, not sure, but I think it's fun to do these because I'm going to explain behind the scenes how stuff works and why I've done things a certain way, while also just showing some cool stuff in the mod. So even if you've already seen all my videos, this will have new stuff in the sense that I'll be trying to explain things more in depth, but I also will definitely be debuting some new features that I've never shown off before, so stick around for the whole video. Um, oh yeah, and last thing is the mod is updated and ready to go, so download it in the description, and you can play anything that I'm showing off right now, and let me know if there's any issues or potential suggestions. Let's get into it. So the first new thing I want to talk about is I've added in aim assist. So this is intended for controller mode only. You'll see that we have this controller mode setting. I've already added that a while ago. Oh, actually, one more quick thing before I continue. I want this video to mostly focus on how I've made my mod kind of more in line with the console version in terms of like miscellaneous features that the console version had, Xbox, but PC didn't, and then also just gamepad support, so like controller stuff, because the PC version kind of was lacking. By default in World at War, you can plug in your controller, it will work, but you have to type some console commands to bind your controls. But I've gone ahead and just made that way easier for the player, where they can just click a button, and that will bind them and then unbind them. So that way, if you'll sometimes notice when you're playing with controller enabled and then doing the console command in vanilla, and then when you're done playing with controller and you want to play on keyboard, you'll still see like in your settings the buttons from the controller, which I don't want. So I want, when the player is done with this controller mode disabled, I want all these random like Y and stuff to disappear, and then they come back when you enable it again. But yeah, so that's something I added a while ago. But this aim assist is pretty cool because it's makes it way easier to play on controller, and makes it much more like the Xbox version. Now, when you do enable it, it gives you a little explanation, because I want to clear up the type of aim assist this is, which is it helps your sights guide like onto their target. It's basically the ADS aim assist. It's not the aim assist that like just automatically moves your like camera. It's specifically just for aiming at targets. That's the aim assist we're doing. And so if we click yes, it does close the menu, and I'll explain why later, but it's enabled now. It's just a behind the scenes thing with how I've made this toggleable for each player, that the menu just has to close whenever you change it, because it's sending a script response, and it's very tricky to make things toggleable that are running in GSC, and obviously this aim assist is running in GSC, it's not in the engine. Because I'm a modder, I'm not really a developer that's going to modify the engine. I'm unfortunately not able to really do that. So yeah, I've added this aim assist, and I also want to give a shout out to the original writer of the script. I've heavily modified it and made it toggleable, so I didn't just copy paste something. It took a ton of work, but someone did lay the foundation for how this can work, and I'll have them in the description, or they're in the README for my mod. I put them in the credits, so that's cool. But yeah, I think I'm gonna hop in game now and stop yapping here, and I'll get back to my aim assist stuff. But while we're loading in, another cool thing is when we have the controller mode enabled, you'll notice that the mouse is hidden on load screens, which is just kind of a cool detail to make it feel like I'm actually playing Xbox. So we can click the start button. You'll also notice right off the bat that the HUD has been updated when you have controller mode enabled. I've obviously showed this off quite a bit, but the latest thing now is it actually has the correct logos. Before, I tried to keep it like semi-neutral and just use generic text, so it said like literally press and hold X, but now it actually has the texture for X. And then at the bottom, the D-pad is actually the icons, it's not just arrows, like in my original version of the mod. But yeah, so that's everything with the HUD is new. If we go and click disable, it'll go back to the default HUD. And this is another change I did, which is I added the hold F in yellow. So this is similar to all other Call of Duties, that pretty much would always highlight the color of your key different than the rest of the text. So like BO1 does this, campaign does this in World at War for most of them, and then multiplayer does it for all of the hints. So zombies was just kind of weird how it never had it with the colored F, so I decided to add that. But we'll go ahead and add controller mode again, and it does give a warning. I know I'm all over the place right now, but just bear with me, I'm trying to explain everything. It does give a warning that you can only use Xbox controllers, just in context on that, which is that World at War only accepts like Microsoft controllers, so if you want to use like a PS3 or PS4, you have to have a program running in the background that will like spoof it so that the Windows thinks it's a Microsoft controller, basically like an emulator. And so that's why I do, because I'm using a PS3 controller. But anyways, back to aim assist. We enable this. Again, it does close our menu. That's intentional, just because it's sending that script response, which essentially the menu is sending a notify to the host, which is then enabling this aim assist for me. And so if I was playing in co-op, the host is normally just only one, you know, it's the person that's the player number one, and so it would need to normally without having a script response from the menu, it would just enable aim assist for every player, with which would be kind of dumb, because you know that you don't want all players to have it if only one person is using it. And that's just a limitation of DVARs and how they work in game script versus like client script. And it's just kind of cringe, but it works. So I'm gonna keep it this way, where the menu closes when you change the setting. And as I've been showing off, you can see it does aim assist. Now it depends on the range that it will aim assist. So like once I get to here, I'm aiming too far away, but then once I get a little closer, yeah. So that's cool. And then another thing is, yeah, there is just a distance range. So if I'm like all the way over here, it's not going to do it. Once I start to get closer, I tried to watch YouTube videos to see what the Xbox version kind of looks like with aim assist, but it's probably not going to be perfect right now. Maybe I can change it in the future if like the range should be longer. But I would need someone to take some footage and show me how the aim assist works on console, because I could only go off of YouTube videos and it's pretty hard to do. But yeah, that's the aim assist. There also is another type of aim assist that's missing from this, which is that the camera will just drag like this normally in like Xbox version, but I'm not able to add that just because I'd have to modify the engine and it's too complex. But Plutonium does add that, so if you play with Plutonium, you can now have like both aim assist, the lock on, and the like dragging camera. So that's cool. Now going back to the HUD, it's interesting how I've added this press and hold X thing, because it's been in my mod for a while, but I will want to explain this just for fun once. Essentially, the game doesn't let you actually have a controller HUD icon or like text or whatever for the X. So even if I had you know, Vanilla World at War, I'm playing with controller, it would still say press F, even though like you see like here how it says like A and B, like it has my buttons bound, and obviously I've bound X to like, you know, the interacting. As you can see, I'm interacting, but it wouldn't show up, and the reason for that is because it's not this X is technically bound to the action called use reload. And that's because on controller we can both use with X and then also reload with X, so it does two things, so it's not the same. And so the janky way that I've gotten around that is, what I've decided to do is when you are playing with controller mode, it unbinds your F key. So if I were to press F, it's not doing anything, and that's because then when it's unbound, it says press and hold use, just the word use. Okay, and so we're going to remember that. So then what we can do is, if we go to our localized strings and we change the word use to a special character, so this is the one I have here, it's just the O. I do have this colored thing, this 7 is a color code, it makes it blue, and that only applies if you're using my legacy patch, which removes the blue, like the X texture, and makes it just a generic X like text, you know, like just this. Yeah, so we make it this fancy O, and then what I do is I go into the texture of the font and I change this fancy O to be the X. So if I like were to type in like the O, I can't do it because I can't open the game chat. It would show up as a blue square. And the reason we do that is because that's like the only way to add in anything custom onto this hint, other than just like, you know, like I guess I could technically do this, like bind X, and then, but it's like, that's kind of dumb, because now if I press X, it's actually doing, I don't like the key X, I don't want that. So it's just like other ways I guess you could try to work around it, but essentially the best way that I found is just you unbind it, and then you change that word use, because you never see that in the vanilla game. You never have your keys unbound, like to where you can't interact. So it's like the perfect little workaround. And I do have a patch that will change that to a square, which is pretty cool if you're using PS3 controller. And then the other thing too is I do have the D-pad icons on the bottom. So with the D-pad, let's see if I can get some more points. And open up this door so I can start using my D-pad. I'm going to buy essential charges. But with the logos on the bottom, I have added a command. So what we can do is you can type this, which will hide the logos if you want. And then you can also do D-pad HUD, which that disables more features. You'll notice that I actually have made the hint string slightly bigger when you're using controller mode. But let me just explain this a bit better by getting something that can be in my D-pad slot. So if I go over here and buy this, so we can press the right arrow and it'll bring this out. And going back to this command, if we do this, so now when I have this command disabled, it still has the generic arrows, but it doesn't have the D-pad logo. So if for some reason you want to play like this, you can also do that. It's a bit cleaner because it only will show the arrow when you actually have something. So like I don't have cheats enabled, shit, but I was going to try to get myself the M1 Grand launcher. But yeah, so that's a way to play. That's how I used to have it in my mod. It didn't actually have the D-pad logo, but personally I prefer to play with that. It just is cooler. And I do have the middle D-pad logo. You'll notice that there's 3. Normally there was only 2 in single player, and then only multiplayer had 3, but that's because in my mod I've added stuff that actually can go in the 3rd slot. So like mortars can go in the 3rd slot, Easter egg items can go in the 3rd slot. So I want to have that shown on screen. But yeah, and then there's also one more thing with the controller HUD, which is if we're spectating, it will show this text. Ignore the command I typed in, you don't ever want to type that in, but if I was spectating, it would say this, press Y to enter 3rd person. And that is another feature I've added into this mod, which is the ability to go 1st and 3rd person while spectating. Normally in World at War, it was like hard-coded in the engine that you could only go into 1st or 3rd person, like change your whatever perspective, by pressing the triangle or Y button on your controller, which is like weird because even if I change my binds for my controller, it's just always the Y button. So whatever, I don't know why they did it that way, but that's how it works. And that means the downside is if you're using mouse and keyboard, you know, I can't ever go into 3rd person or 1st person. I'm just stuck in whatever default perspective it is. I think it's by default 3rd person. So the way that I have fixed that is just done a custom GSC script that runs and will check for if the player presses F. So if, let's see, if I was to disable controller mode, let's just do that actually. Oops. It then now goes back to F, so that's perfect. So if I have disabled controller mode, it will do F for 1st and 3rd person. And the other thing, I can't do it because I don't have cheats enabled, but if I were to go into 3rd person, this text would then change to say 1st person, because obviously it's the opposite of whatever you're currently in. So that's it for the controller HUD that I can think of. Yeah, actually, there's one more thing, which is the bottom right stuff here. I shifted the points, like the red blood and the number, just a little bit like to the left, so it lines up better with the end of the, the name of the gun. I don't know if you can kind of see what I'm saying here, but it used to be a little bit more off-centered, and I think I might have moved it up a little bit, I forgot, but it just looks better this way. So yeah, let's disable this as well. But yeah, I think that's it for the controller HUD. It's really just the interact key and then the D-pad stuff at the bottom here. So another cool thing that I've done is I've made an alternate patch that you can drop into your files if you want to have glowing chalk text on Nocturne Totem. So one thing you might remember if you played Xbox or PS3 is that this text was actually glowing, but for some reason on PC it wasn't. So I like to play with the patch on, but it's optional. It's a cool thing you can do. So yeah, I'm not going to show the PS3 patch, but I do have that in the description in my mod download. It's called the DualShock patch, and if you do that, it will actually properly put like the PS3 D-pad at the bottom and square logo and the triangle logo for spectating, the whole 9 yards. So I'm going to quit now, and let's see if there's other stuff I can talk about. So yeah, I want to quickly talk about some things that I've done to make the game more like the console version. So I obviously added in achievements. I've already talked about this plenty, I don't need to waste time on this, but pretty cool how they save and everything, and you can track your progress. And then I've also added character bios, obviously talked about this plenty, but those two things were just iconic. Sad that they weren't on the PC version, but now with this mod you have them. And the latest thing this summer I added was the ability to view your stats. So if we go to view stats, we can see it shows our top games based on how many players. So I've reset my stats plenty of times, and I just don't happen to have a 3 or 4 player rank, so it's just your record. But that's pretty cool to track your progress. Now you don't have to memorize it. If you like to keep track of how far you've gone, it'll just save it here. And it also saves some of your personal stats, including your time played, which I think is pretty fun. So yeah, that's pretty cool. These are all the same stats that were on the console version of the game. So yeah, and I think that's pretty much everything to talk about for the console related stuff. I'm trying to remember. I mean, we talked about the first and third person thing. We talked about achievements, the leaderboard, and character bios, and controller support. So I think that's everything. So we can move on now to some other stuff.
Power levels critical.
I don't know what this thing is, but it needs power.
So we're back on our favorite Doris, the classic. This is where I did so many of my dev videos on, because this mod was originally just for Doris. Cool feature, are a couple fixes I added. These green jars used to always be inconsistent with the sound, but now it always plays it every single time, no matter what. Look at that. And also notice another cool thing. Do you hear that? The sound, the ambient loop sound stops when you collect it, just like in Keynote or Tone onwards. So I'll go ahead and... Do I even do it? I don't really want the song, but this ambient loop sound stops when you interact, so I'm not going to do it because I don't want the song, but that's a cool fix I added. And then another fix is, similar to that, is the mystery box music that sometimes cut out when you're using the box while also shooting your guns too loudly, too quickly. But that was an easy little fix in the sound alias. So... It's MB42 zombie, I forgot the name, so I wasn't able to do it. But you know, if you're shooting like a lot, it would not let you hear the rest of the song. It would just cut out. That was pretty annoying. Another thing I added too is a ranking system. So this is inspired by BO2. If we go to host online, you'll see this is my rank. It's only really just for show. It doesn't do anything. And it doesn't even tell you when you're ranking up. It's just like at the end of the game in co-op, you can see your number will have changed when you die. And then obviously, if you're playing solo, it doesn't even show up. You have to go to here to see it. But I just thought that was cool to be able to kind of track how well you're doing. If you have been playing really far, then you'll have a higher rank. It's cool to compare with your buddies, I guess. Another thing I forgot to mention is the controller settings here. We got the inversion, sensitivity, and this controller triggers actually now remembers when you disable your controller mode and re-enable it. It will remember if you like to play with flipped or default. Personally, I like to play with flipped because I use a PS4 controller, but yeah, so that's that. Man, there's been so many changes. I might have to just do what I used to do. Pull up my readme. What else can I talk about here? Oh, you know, I might as well show No, I'm not going to show the aim assist, how that works, but I've already explained that well enough. The aim assist menu stuff that sends a message to the script. One thing I actually do want to talk about is, what map do I want to do this on? Let's go to Verrucht. So I want to do a couple more things to show off, and then we'll call it there. But first off, there was a bug that you could get where if you killed zombies too quickly, like all at the same time with the grenades, it would actually bypass the power-up limit. I like to play with the controller. Let's do this. And so I fixed that, which is cool, because it was pretty broken. You could get like 10 power-ups at once if you were really lucky. And that was because essentially just the game, well, I don't need to explain how it works, but I fixed that bug, and you don't have to worry about getting too many power-ups and breaking the balance by killing with bouncing Bettys, for example. Not that anyone would be worried about that, but that's a cool fix. And the reason that also partly happens is because of how you get power-ups based on points. So there's a cool thing that people probably didn't know, which is that you're guaranteed a power-up after you've gotten a certain amount of points. And that code was actually also partially broken in co-op. It's supposed to scale with the amount of players you have, that the more players you have, the more points you need, but that was broken in the World at War vanilla game, and so I fixed that. Now, it doesn't really make too much of a difference, but technically you'll have less power-ups guaranteed, like early on. I mean, you'll still eventually get them all, because like, it just, the way the points scale, it eventually gets scaled way too high, and you won't ever get those power-ups way late in the game, but for our purposes, it'll be fine. It's just slightly balanced better, because I don't want people to be able to get power-ups like round one, like the first zombie they kill, that gives them a guaranteed power-up. That's just kind of lame. So, yeah, that's fixed. I've tested it, and it's not really noticeable. So yeah, but that's also, they did fix it in like BO1, I think, and BO2. So if you're like, you're used to the normal zombie formula, you're not going to be like thrown off by that. Another cool thing I added is, on this map only, there's some scripted dialogue from player 4, so the green points guy. If you playing 4-player with him, there's certain ways to get special scripted dialogue that's like from the trailer, but I'm not going to explain how that all works. It's kind of an Easter egg. Just play with your buddies in 4-player a bunch with player 4 and see if you can figure it out. It kind of happens randomly. Not fully, it's not random at all. It just kind of feels random, because I don't want it to seem like really lame that it happens every time. It's supposed to be an Easter egg, like little quotes. So yeah, that's kind of cool. There's also another Easter egg on this map that I've talked about in my streams with the traps. So if you enable traps a certain amount of times, eventually you can randomly get the PA song to play again, which is cool. And speaking of these traps, I did fix more bugs with them. There was actually an issue with traps in Old World at War, where when you had multiple traps running and one of the traps ended, it would actually end some effects and sounds for all traps at the same time, even though other ones may still be running. So I'll try to show that here. Oh, where's this last guy? So annoying, man. But man, there's just been a lot of fixes and cool stuff that I've been doing lately. I struggled to document it all and explain it all. You really just gotta play and enjoy. Even though like 90% of things in this mod you don't really notice, but it is what it is. Another cool thing I guess I can actually talk about right now is the barriers. So I've made it so the barriers play that hammer sound independent of the point sound. So once you've hit your limit on points, which we're almost coming up on, it will keep playing the hammer sound when you repair, which is how it works in BO1. So that's kind of cool. It will sound a little bit more like polished, I guess. And then another thing, speaking of that limit, is I made it so that the point limit actually only depends on the amount of times you earn the points. Points, not the number of points. So if you get a double points and you're earning your plus 20, it's not going to just make you hit the limit quicker, because that's like lame. Like, what's the point? And then if the limit just, like, it doesn't even help you with double points, you just hit the limit anyways. So that doesn't matter anymore. You should make use of double points especially. But yeah, you can hear that hammer sound is playing when repairing, even when we're not earning points. And I also fixed a little bug where sometimes you would get plus 10 on the bottom right but not hear that point sound, because that's obviously a new thing I added where you only hear the point sound when you're getting points. Roll that word by default, you used to always give the point sound. There was a weird thing in this room specifically where your audio would slightly get quieter. Like if you were playing the music Easter egg and you went into this room, it would be slightly quieter, and I fixed that, but I just thought I would point that out. So yeah, let me hit this. So you see this little effect, this orange light here, and then there's like multiple electrical sounds playing, but one of them, it's hard to point out which one. That and this effect of this orange light would stop if, say, I turn this trap on, or sorry, I turn that trap on first, and then that trap is ending, but this trap is still going. It would cut off early, and that's weird. So I fixed that. I also fixed these levers a while ago. They would normally stay down until it's done recharging, and that could lead to potential bugs where, like, excuse me, when you're spamming the traps, as soon as it's like active and I spam activate it. So instead what I've done is the lever returns to the default position when it's off, so that way now when it's active, boom, active, and I could hit it, it will now go down and it won't glitch out. Another very small thing I think I added. Let me see. Yeah, the last zombie turns into a runner, but I'm pretty sure this even happens in BO1. It like spams their run animation over and over, I think. So they would constantly change their running animation, and it looked pretty weird. But now it just sets them into a run once, and you're good. While we're here, I did finally decide to remove the screen shake from carpenters. I used to have it because I was like, technically a carpenter is repairing them, so it should do the screen shake when you repair, but it does look kind of weird, so I removed that. Speaking of corrupt voiceover, which we can hear right now, I completely rebalanced the categories a while ago. And that was pretty fun, because sometimes the lines would repeat over multiple categories, or they didn't even exist in categories at all, so like there's no explosive dialogue. I'm pretty sure on direct by default, so I added that. And also that quote you just heard, that was not an explosive quote, that was just a quote because I had been damaged. Yeah, I think that's kind of where I want to wrap it up here. I've rambled on for enough. There's so many more things I could talk about, but man, it's just fun to mod this game. There's always potential for new fixes and features. But yeah, I'll call it there. I do wish I kind of had a better list of stuff that was all new that I've never talked about. But it's like there's just too many things that I've been working on that I don't even remember what's like the new stuff and the stuff that I've added a while ago, I guess. And I probably talked about all this in my streams a lot anyways. Not all of this. The aim assist is definitely new. But yeah, if there's interest in these types of videos, I'll maybe put a little more effort in like I used to with the whole to-do list on the side and talk about just new stuff. Yeah, that's going to be it.